Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic. Happy Saturday morning. We have a Love is Blind story to get to right now. The title, How Is This Legal? We've got a Love is Blind Season 2 alumni, Nick Thompson, telling us exactly what went down in his experience on Love is Blind. He says this: "You signed up for it" is the common phrase that people say when you complain about being on the show. And here's what he has to say he actually signed up for. "I signed up for a psychologically based love experiment sold as different from other reality shows. Love is Blind Season 1 made a believer out of me, and I thought the experience could work for me if I went with good intentions and stayed true to myself. The vetting process included psych tests and evaluations, background checks, and assurance the cast member selected is ready for marriage. The psychologist that conducted my evaluation even spoke with my therapist to verify the ethics and conditions of the show out of concern it would diminish progress made on my mental health journey. None of this was true. I lost 15 pounds in the 3 weeks in the pods in Mexico from limited access to food and water. Aside from the psych evaluation, there was no mental health support before, during, or after. Thankfully, I had the luxury of a therapist once we were back in Chicago and post-show." When people say you signed up for this, and of course this reel has gotten nearly 400,000 views so far, and then he describes the lack of support and the fact that while they were paid $1,000 a week, it came out to $7 an hour because they were so overworked. So lack of rights on a show that's kind of one of the biggest dating shows in the world. That we love to expose these types of issues that happen in reality TV, and what better way to have this discussion than to talk to Nick himself. Nick Thompson is joined by Jeremy Hartwell in this conversation. I hope you enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, so excited today to have this conversation. Jeremy Hartwell is a Season 2 cast member of Love is Blind and founder of the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network. And Nick Thompson, also Season 2 alumni of Love is Blind and a mental health advocate. Nice to talk to you guys today.
Hey, nice to talk to you. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, I am just so excited here. Obviously, Love is Blind just finished its 4th season, and it looks like, Jeremy, you just launched this network. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did just launch the UCAN Foundation, and that stands for Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network. And I say we because Nick has been instrumental in helping me stand this up. So he's part of the founding board, and our mission really is to just see a future where reality TV is produced and distributed without the exploitation and the abuse, right? Where cast members are afforded the same protections that you would get in any other industry, even just scripted television, right? We want to see entertainment produced in an ethical way that supports cast members' mental health and doesn't make them feel vulnerable and exposed.
It's so great. And I've been talking about this for so long. I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild for 15 years. If somebody smokes on set or if it rains, there's always a pay increase. You're taking care of meals at 6 hours, breaks at certain times, double pay after 9 p.m. All these things exist. At what point, Nick, did you feel like because did you become a mental health advocate because of your time on the show, or were you already exploring mental health beforehand?
So my mental health journey started about 6 years ago when I realized I wasn't happy, and I was, very short fused, and I was very just unsettled in my life. And so as I started getting the opportunity, I started seeing a therapist. I still see her today. As I started that mental health journey, and I started to learn some of the things that I needed to do to help manage my depression and put structure around my days so that I don't have these feelings of like, what am I doing right now? To put boundaries around people and in relationships that weren't really beneficial to me. And so as I went on, this is something I started sharing with more people in my network, prior to the show. And I wanted to share, hey, I have experienced so many benefits from therapy, so I want to share it with other people. And then going through the show was a complete disconnect from what I was expecting, in a sense. But going through this and seeing how many people, living my situation and seeing how many people were suffering the whole time, it really kind of made me realize, like, oh, I may have had a nice, healthy, mentally strong circle of people, but there's a lot of people out there that haven't had that luxury that I've had to do 6 years of therapy. So I want to like share things that I've learned. I want to help connect people. And then, in the reality TV space, I want to bring people in and let them know like they're not alone. I mean, this is it's such a traumatizing experience. And I don't believe anyone who says they weren't in some way traumatized from going through any reality TV experience. So I just want to bring these people together, and I want to advocate for them, and I want to advocate with them so that we can all get the mental health support that we deserve before, during, and after a show.
Yeah, it seems like the main recipe for reality TV is to put humans into situations that that squeeze out as most drama as possible, which is the same thing that cults do, right? They sleep deprive you, and they do all these other tools, remove you from your social media and your friend groups. Jeremy, we talked before we went on air here, but can you explain some of like maybe the science of what's actually going on when you're in these pods on the show?
Yeah, and I say this with a disclaimer that I'm not a scientist, but I am very nerdy about this stuff, right? I have a deep passion for understanding human motivation and behavior from a biological perspective, from a neuroscience perspective, right? So when you look at some of these things that they were doing, it's deliberately for the psychological manipulation, and I want to highlight the sleep deprivation, right? But this goes hand in hand with all of the other deprivation tactics, the food deprivation, the control over our ability to even use the bathroom, right, without asking somebody first. So, but going back to the sleep deprivation, there's kind of like two main areas of your brain for the purposes of this conversation. It's obviously more complex than this, right? But you have the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like your rational decision making center of your brain, right? It's kind of like a filter. So when you have an impulse, it gets in the way and it says, hey, maybe tone that back a little bit, or there are societal norms, or this isn't acting in your own best interest, right? Underneath that, you have the amygdala, and that's your more like, that's the older part of your brain that's really just reactive, emotional, impulsive, right? Normally, when you get enough sleep, your prefrontal cortex, it intercepts an impulse and it makes a rational decision based on what's in your best interest and based on what you control, right? Very quickly, even after one night of sleep deprivation, you lose about 80% of that filter. And so your amygdala is just getting total control over your actions. So instead of like creating rational decisions, you're being reactive, you're being emotional, you're doing things that you don't necessarily have control over, right? And this is why sleep deprivation is, and I'm not saying we were interrogated, right? But this is why sleep deprivation is used as a tactic in interrogation, because you can't control what you're saying or you're doing, and you become much more open to manipulation. And that's exactly what, again, I can't prove that they're actively doing any of this, right? But it doesn't take a lot of speculation to understand, like, look, if you're putting people in these ridiculous situations of getting proposed to someone after 2 weeks of not seeing them, that's just insane, right? You have to create situations and environments that takes otherwise rational people and has them do irrational things while they're feeling like they're rational and in control, right? And I think that's the key.
Yeah, no, you're so dead on. And Love is Blind obviously labels itself as an experiment, but it really talks about the experiment of not being able to see the person you're falling for. But the experiment really is you are the guinea pigs as they sort of mess with you in this environment that just wouldn't be conducive to what a normal tribe would be. It seems to me one of the hardest things with the mental health struggle must be that audiences don't get a chance to empathize with you. They don't know what you're going through. And the common response we'll get on this video from somebody is, hey, you guys knew what you were signing up for. So Nick, what's the response to people that say, hey, you asked for this?
Funny you should say that, because I'm going to put together a social media post about this today. So this will be tying in very well. When someone says you signed up for this, do you know what I signed up for? I signed up for a love experiment. I signed up for everybody being there for the right reasons. I signed up for normal living conditions. I signed up for the ability to eat food and drink water, because I guess we take those things for granted here in a civilized country, that those are just guarantees. I understand sleeping would be a little bit different, but I didn't understand the isolation that took place. I definitely don't think everyone was there for the right reasons. And, because I had been in therapy too for so long, my therapist was like, I like the show's concept. I don't know if reality TV's for you because you've done so well at like being reflective and not reacting and being responsive and, you know, removing people that aren't good for you in your life and shedding them and all of this stuff. And she actually spoke with the psychologist that did my psych evaluation because she had a few questions that she wanted to ask about like how they were basically qualifying people or evaluating people before she gave me a blessing to go on the show. So that's what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for starving. I didn't sign up for losing 15 pounds in the first 3 weeks. I didn't sign up for getting a migraine because of lack of water and lack of sleep. And I didn't even drink that much on the show because I was well aware of what that would do given the situation. So that's not what I signed up for. I signed up for a love experiment that was sold to me basically with a bill of goods.
Yeah, and Jeremy, last summer you actually sued the production company Kinetic, and I think and you correct me if I'm wrong, but the main issue was the fact that while they do pay you, you are working so many hours it barely comes out to minimum wage. Can you explain that side, the financial side of like being exploited?
Yeah, and so I just want to be clear that I'm not commenting on the status of the lawsuit or anything that's outside of what's already made publicly available, right? And what we're trying to do with UCAN is distinct and separate from the lawsuit for a couple of different reasons. But having said that, the lawsuit was filed because there's good evidence that we were not provided what we were legally required to be provided for as employees, and the way that they tried to get around this was classifying us as contract laborers. And if you read the contract, it's kind of framed like that. But that, there's a law in California called AB5, which basically says like there's a 3-part test that you have to use to be able to classify employees as contract laborers, and you have to meet all 3 of these criteria. If you look at that test, as the cast members of this show, we didn't even meet one of those, right? And so that's sort of where the lawsuit, came from. And again, I'm not going to comment on where that's going or where that is right now, but I will say that they filed W-2s on our behalf to the IRS, which means that to the IRS, they admitted we were full-time employees while calling us contract laborers.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there is the mental health aspect, the basic human rights you want while you're on the show, along with the proper compensation. We're talking about one of the largest dating shows in the world here, and we know Netflix will pay $50 million for a stand-up special. There was 6+ million people that were trying to get into the Netflix finale. They're making and printing a ton of money here and exploiting in the process.
They just had over $8 billion last quarter they made. And that's a bad quarter. But they made $8 billion in revenue.
They would have made more, but I steal passwords from my mom. I'm fighting the good fight here.
I cracking down on that.
I traced some financial breadcrumbs, and by Netflix's own metrics, they make about $80 to $90 million per season of Love is Blind.
Yeah, and it seems like Netflix, they're the platform. They probably don't care as long as they feel like it's legal what Kinetic is doing.
Yeah.
Like I said before about the Screen Actors Guild, it was created because actors were being exploited. They were all driving out like nearly 100 years ago, right, to LA to be a part of, to become famous, to be something, and they were expendable. And don't, no offense, but reality TV stars go through a huge process with a lot of people that they can be chosen from in a lot of cases. If they feel like you're speaking up for yourself, you might not even make it to the show, or they might edit you out or something like that. And we know, Jeremy, you were there for the first week, and I know that Kinetic's response to you, their statement was something like, well, we don't know what his motives are, but he was only there for a week, as if your mental health in a week of your time wasn't worth anything, as if it wasn't worth the basic conditions that you would hope that you would have. So how do you plan on helping reality and people that work in unscripted TV in the future, whether it be negotiating contracts or what? How can you guys help them?
So that's a great question. And what we're trying to do here with the UCAN Foundation is give people the resources to fill the gap that is clearly missing from reality TV cast members and reality TV production. And in that, like, our goal and our vision is to make sure everyone has mental health support pre to prep, during, and post, It's to help them review their contracts so that they understand what they're actually getting into. It's to provide assistance in understanding what their rights are and what is legal. And Jeremy talks about this often, where just because something's in a contract doesn't make it legal. So just helping them understand their rights, build this network of cast members that's almost like a group of people, in a support system or in a community that have been through something similar. Because what's so difficult about this is, yes, reality stars are a dime a dozen these days, but we don't all talk to each other. Some people do, but like, we don't all come together and realize like, hey, we've been exploited, we've been mistreated, no one cares. So just getting that group of cast together, and then in the event of legal support, or in the event of a dispute, we want to be able to support with or give legal support to these people as well. Because I mean, I could get sued. How am I going to go up against Netflix and Kinetic?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's awful.
We've been following Blake Horstman of Bachelor, and he lost a $175,000 lawsuit. Luke, another cast member, Luke P, lost $120,000, and all they were trying to do was defend their character. And some could argue that the $175,000 that Blake lost was actually worth it, because he wouldn't have a career because he was being shamed and canceled. And the contracts essentially let the production companies do whatever they want with your likeness. They can stitch together edits and things like that. How can cast members or potential cast members trust that they're not gonna have their name demolished unwillingly?
Well, that's the thing. You really can't, because they can put together whatever story they want to. I have heard from another, I'm not going to name it, but another cast member that they like used words out of context. I've heard this from a few, actually, now that I think back. So they'll take words that you said in another scene and then put up, show a different angle and then put it in that scene. So like you're like manipulating reality to tell whatever preconceived narrative that's been constructed by these producers. And from my perspective, like, that's incredibly damaging to a person, and it makes you question reality. You're basically getting gaslit when you watch that show or watch any of these shows. And the fact that they can do all this without any ability for you to defend yourself or ability for you to clear the air after they've literally lied, I think that's just awful. And people should be more comfortable and step up more so that we can start to make some of this change.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Nick, obviously there is that aspect of like, look, you are going on a reality TV. Like, yes, we're adults, we're making decisions and choices, and it's so prolific right now. There is some responsibility for like the public. We can't control how the public's going to react, right? But the difference is it's the phrase "in good faith," right? So you go into this with good faith, understanding, yes, they're going to edit me, yes, they're going to create a storyline, right? But they sell to you the full understanding that they're going to frame you as you actually act, right? They're going to edit it because it's TV, but they're going to show who you are to the world, right? Not turn you into some Frankenstein that doesn't exist by stitching together disparate conversations from like totally different people, or from like cutting up timelines so bad that food disappears and reappears on plates. That's where it needs to stop. It's not editing in good faith, and you're no longer your own likeness. If someone does that to you and they put that so much cutting and editing on the cutting room floor there, you're no longer that likeness. Like, they've turned you into something else. And that's the issue right there.
Yeah, and we know, obviously, they use the metal chalices so you can't see how far down someone's drink is. And on Bachelor, they don't even eat the food. The food's just there because, they have to edit around it. So it seems like part of the issue is the things they'll do during filming, during production, to squeeze the most drama and recklessness out of you. But then there's also the fallout from a community that doesn't always get that what you see, even when people say, but I saw them say it out of their mouths, isn't a honest portrayal of who someone might be. What are you guys planning to do, or what have you done within your own journey to mitigate that post-show hate that you get sent right to your phones?
I mean, you haven't. I for months to this day, especially this week with this, I am scared to pick up my phone, and I don't typically care what other people think about me. I know who I am. I know I act with integrity, and I know I have values that are good values. But it gets to you. It like whittles away at you a little bit at a time, and the mean comments, the mean DMs, being called abusive, being called a narcissist, being called gay, which like, how is that even an insult? Those things take their toll on you. And it over time, it just wears on you. And then, having gone through a very public and kind of nasty at times divorce, I just was like, I'm just trying to live my life. And I'm afraid to leave. Like, do these people like really think that I'm like that? Am I going to see someone at the grocery store that's going to be like narcissist, or, that guy's a monster, all because of, what people say? It's just insane. One example I'll share really quick, and then I'll stop talking. I had a friend from England that visited at the end of last summer, and we went out to brunch with a couple of my friends, and there was an entire Reddit thread, first of all, shaming her. Second of all, saying, obviously, Nick cheated, and that's why this ended. Caught fire. I mean, I got an unbelievable amount of hate for that. And I got an unbelievable amount of mean DMs for that. And it's like, what are people doing? But you just kind of have to take it, and you have to learn how to live with it. And you've got to delete the comments, is what they trained us for as prep. Delete mean comments and block people. Okay, I think we all know how to do that.
Yeah, but you're right.
Doesn't take away the struggle.
It might be a Sunday morning, you're out to brunch. It could be anything, and you look up at your phone, and the phone is where we conduct our business. It's where our social lives are all mixed together, and good things can come from social media. But the anonymity of commenters, it's really just leads to the worst thoughts from people, and the mischaracterization, feeling ostracized from your community. I couldn't imagine what you went through. I've only received a tiny bit of that from my online dealings, and it's tough, and it's nothing like anything I've ever felt on stage doing stand-up. I've never, in a decade of doing stand-up, have had anyone talk to me the way they have in my DMs, probably on a daily basis. And some people...
it gives people...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, some people just don't have the tools to handle it and fly in, the show, like I always say, they can fly too close to the sun. And at what point, as we've seen on other reality shows that have existed where people, have self-harm, at what point is someone going to go too far and not be able to handle it? And contestants are screaming from the top of their lungs that they are unwell with this all. And we all need to start listening and acting.
Well, I think I want to hit on something you said where like not everyone can handle this. No one can handle it, right? And I count myself lucky for the fact that I didn't have much airtime because I didn't receive the volume of hate, right? But I did get some of it, especially after filing the lawsuit. And I can tell you, even a little bit, it just gnaws at you, and it makes you, like Nick said, it makes you question your own reality. And this is like, I've spent 15 years developing a stoic practice of meditation and being in the moment and being present and not getting caught up in emotions, right? And how quickly these hateful comments took me out of that at 1% of the volume that some of these other people get, right? It was shocking to me, and nobody can withstand that. And so I think, like, to people who watch these shows and have just their reactions about what's going on, I think, to a lot of people, I understand, right? Like, if I saw someone suing a production company who I hadn't heard of, I might have thought the same thing, like, oh, you're just in this for fame, right? I get it. I understand that. But I would just ask that, like, look, maybe instead of like running with these assumptions, you start asking questions and you start leading with compassion and empathy instead of like the hate and viscera that like just gets thrown at people like Nick. It's horrible to watch.
Yeah, and Nick, I actually, before I knew we were going to have this conversation, I actually shared one of your Instagram reels that was kind of,
that.
Yeah, it was like, hey, here's 6 things you can do as an audience to kind of chill out a little bit and just watch the show. Right. Enjoy the theater and just cool down, because you're going to feel it. Look, if you're going to get characterized a certain way, you're going through things on the show, it's already going to suck dealing with the fallout. And this season, contestants, they've already got the worst. Everyone has their own stories of how they've had to cope with it. But the wrecking ball just does not stop at the target. Too much collateral damage. What would you guys do if I gave you the keys to Love is Blind? What would you do tomorrow on day one of shooting to clean things up a little bit?
Well, I would make sure that at the very least, there is no union, but I would make sure that union practices are implemented. For me, the number one thing that I'm focused on long term is I want every single reality TV person to have, as I've said before, pre, during, and post mental health services independent from the production company, because I don't want them to be able to use any of that type of information to push contestants or push a narrative or manipulate. So for me, those are like the number one big things. I also think like just if Love is Blind is which I don't think it is, if it's actually a love experiment, my point to make here is let people go through it organically. Don't manipulate them. Don't thrust them into situations that aren't going to be in real life. Have a therapist or a mental health professional on set to jump in and teach healthy habits on how to navigate conflict instead of sitting there building toxic ones that you're going to take with you outside of the show, all because it provides them with more drama. So if it's an actual experiment, that would be where I would start.
Jeremy?
Yeah, Nick, that's you took all the good ones. I think what I would add to that is I would pay people according to the worth and the revenue they're generating, right? In the same way that scripted actors who star in $100 million blockbusters get residuals, like cast members need to be compensated commensurate with the revenue they're generating for these distribution and production companies. So I would start with that, right? Just to make them feel valued, and then not have them rely on what is going to be a toxic social media to try to claw back some amount of money after the fact, right? That's so wrong. To make them, get their money after the fact on social media by continuing to spin around this drama. So
Well,
first,
and
it's
that
make the pay commensurate with scripted acting. I think that's a good baseline to start with. But also just being fully transparent with everybody, like make the cast involved in part of the production process. And to Nick's point, let the storylines and the relationships develop organically and fully like talk to the cast members like, hey, this is the direction we think we're going to be going. It looks like you two have a really good connection. Do you feel the same way? We'd like to go in this direction. What are your thoughts? What are your input? Right. I think you can have a really great show that, and look, people are dramatic, right? We're human beings. The drama is going to be there whether or not you force it. I just think you can let it happen organically and do it far more ethically.
Yeah, I always say good content is information plus entertainment. They've got the entertainment down, but like the therapy sessions, like you said, being able to coach people on what they're doing that's right or wrong, or why certain things are toxic or coming off the wrong way. These are ways that they can grow, and a giant audience can grow as well throughout the process. I had to ask you this: is there a drink maximum that they've got on the show? Do they keep track of that?
Unlimited.
No. Unlimited,
I
yeah, because
guess.
Bachelor had an
I
issue.
think there might have been one. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say Bachelor had an issue, and they limited it to like 1 hour, and there's still problems with that. But corporations, I've always said this, are psychopathic. They don't care about you, and it comes down to people having to demand for certain rights and structure that leads to a healthier thing here, and not having either what Bachelor had, which was a sexual assault claim because of too much drinking, to the claims of that the issues of self-harm or thoughts of literal crying for help, telling producers, I need help, I can't do this. Not only sometimes, and I've covered this story already, but not only sometimes do they not listen to you, but then they edit you to look a certain way, and it's dismissive of your actual feelings. I can't imagine how enraging it would be to relive that. And what were you going to say there, Nick?
On that, for the Business Insider article, she asked me to walk through what happened in Mexico. And to be honest, I was like, I'm not sure I actually know anymore, because I know what I think I experienced, and I know certain things I experienced, but then when I watched on TV did not line up with that. And that's where the gaslighting kind of comes in with this stuff, where you're just kind of like, I don't think that happened that way, but I remember it differently. Am I remembering it wrong? And, that type of thing, it doesn't have to be that way. That's the point. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. And I want to add something on the social media or the residuals, however you want to say. So we made $1,000 a week. It equates to $7.24 an hour when sprawled out over the course of that, right? So I haven't made a penny after the show. So they sell you this social media. You're going to make, this is, you'll make $1 million a year. Like all this crazy shit that they tell. Sorry, I'm not.
No, it's
swear.
okay.
You want me to
It's okay.
re-say that? Okay. All this stuff they tell you, like I haven't made a penny. I got laid off from my job, which I've heard through the grapevine. Part of it was related to the show and the output afterwards. And then on top of that, like there's no income. There's no residual income. There's still people watching Love is Blind season 2. They're still profiting off of people watching that. And I might be homeless in 3 months. So it's like, it's an illusion that they sell you of grandeur that, the celebrity status, all of the brand opportunities and all of this stuff. Well, when you don't have someone that's going to be your agent and proactively go get them, you're not getting any of that. You're not getting any other opportunities. And so, and it's not their responsibility necessarily to do this, to do anything about this as it is now. But wouldn't it be something if when they say you're part of the Netflix family now, it meant something?
Yeah. There's a standard that they're not living up to. And as a relatively young company, I think it's time that these voices are heard, especially coming from men in the community who haven't always been a part of a mental health conversation. So I think it's very, it's just really great that you guys are doing this and starting this network. Before we wrap up, how can the audience best support the work you guys are doing?
So the best way you can support.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, I was say the most important thing you can do is donate to us. We have a donate to the cause. We have a wealth of mental health professionals that are working with us right now. Everyone's on volunteer. There's not some magic backing to this. So right now we have a lot of volunteers that are offering to help. So any donation helps us pay essentially these professionals for their services. Secondly, share us on social media. Push this out there, push the Business Insider article. Awareness is going to be key, not just for the mistreatment and exploitation, but also for this foundation to continue to grow.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Nick. And I just want to reiterate, we're a nonprofit and we are absolutely committed to full transparency in every dollar donated, right? No one on the board is making a cent. We're fully volunteer on this. In Nick and I's case, we're probably working 20 or 30 hours a week on this right now. It's just such an important cause to us, but in order for it to continue, we need to get some grassroots funding.
Yeah, I think it's great, and hopefully you have some other big reality alumni that help promote the cause. I'm going to share both of your social medias and the link to the website in the description below. Is there anything else you guys want to say before we head out?
I would just say be kind. We're all in pressure cookers all the time. I have never felt so bad for so long. And I can imagine other people are having it worse time at it. Of course, some are probably handling it better, but you never know what someone's going through. So just be kind. And if there's some urge to say something bad on the internet, stop and ask yourself, is this about me or is this about them?
Well said. Jeremy?
I can't top that. I just say the same, like lead with compassion. If you just live by that rule, you can do no wrong.
Beautiful. Well said, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
All right, have a good weekend. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'm going to be having many more like that on the podcast, Bachelor Rush Hour. Just go to bachelorrushhour.com or type in Bachelor Rush Hour wherever you listen. If you want to put some bread in the tip jar, you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Neal. It helps us keep having these conversations. All right, folks, have a good weekend. Leave a comment. Be kind out there, and we'll talk to you later.